Chapter 50, Attempt to develop the Savage Lands well, that's how it is, Wendelin. I don't have any objections either. I request Baron Baumeister's group to contribute to the development of this territory. Artor. It's 1 week after finishing the purification in the Demon Forest. We once again faced Father in negotiations at the mansion of the Baumeister main family. Be that as it may, Father basically doesn't do something like opposing us. Previously the conditions had been conveyed by Burkhart San, who acted as messenger of Margrave Braithilda. Besides, since Father is still the territory's lord, it's nothing more than a good plan to gain the fief's population support on top of leading to the advancement of the territory. Even discounting Kurt's feelings on this matter, it was only common sense for the feudal lord to approve of this plan. As a result, various and several subjects were resolved. As Kurt, sitting next to Father, has been left out of the loop, he is slightly trembling like a small dog while being the only one with a bright red face. Although he likely wants to vent out some complaints, he has been stopped by Father, as any more reckless remarks from him would directly influence the reputation of the Baumeister household. During the negotiations he continued to glare at me without saying anything. He still hasn't snapped, eh? Guess we have to provoke him some more. Wendelin. First off, the appraisal of the sordid articles of the deceased. We left with Margrave Braithilda, the articles which were left behind due to the absence of an owner and the raw materials of the monsters we fought, had finished. According to the prior negotiation, the Baumeister household side has been given 30% of the share. Kurt seems to have expected a substantial amount from that. Once I was given the detailed account of the written item details, he took it from me as if stealing it and searched the numerical figures. Given that he can't calculate it all, he isn't able to judge anything but the field stating the total amount they will get. However, he can't even properly tell whether they have been cheated either. If you can't confirm it yourself, you won't be able to tell whether it's bullshit or false either. I think it's little Kurt. And he has been disappointed by looking at the numbers. Given that the total sum isn't more than 200,000 cents, he is somewhat unhappy, as he has been thinking until now that it will be a large amount of money. Klaus, are there any mistakes in this calculation? Kurt. There aren't, Klaus. It would be impossible in the first place for Margrave Braithilda, being in charge of the kingdom's south, to do something like swindling the money handed over to the poor knight household next to him. That's only natural, since the lost reputation would be larger than the obtained profit by swindling a small amount of money. It's also unlikely for him to make a mistake. There are several talented people who are beyond Klaus' level in financial affairs within the Margrave Braithilda household. Still, the debt the Baumeister household made with the Margrave Braithilda household has been cleared. Burkhart. Debt. Kurt. The debt meant here is the support money from the main household and the capital at the time the Baumeister household became independent in this territory, which they didn't return. There was also the debt for the congratulatory gifts for Eric Nissan's, Paul Nissan's and Helmut Nissan's marriages, which they didn't provide. Margrave Braithilda, in his function as patron, has settled all of that and paid for them. Of course this was something that had to be resolved. Looking at the written details, the paid back amount is reasonable. Klaus. As expected, even for Klaus it was nothing more than an ambitious undertaking. But, Kurt, who heard about that, raged. We are the ones who decide when we will return the money. Kurt. Though he said that, I'm certain he likely hadn't any intention to pay back the money. Margrave Braithilda really has absolutely no trust in them, since he has done it in such way. Kurt is really a stupid man. It's normal for nobles to make debts, but isn't it better if you repay those quickly, as a debt is a debt after all? Wendelin. Even if you say anything to Kurt, it's only a waste of time, therefore I try to ask Father. That's right. With this our debts are gone. Artor. Father finished the matter concerning the work in the Demon Forest with these few words. And, also did the same for the story about the debts of the Baumeister household. Will Baron Baumeister's group be active as adventurers hereafter? Artor. Building our base in this territory, we will go hunting in the Demon Forest by using my teleportation magic from here. In addition, we will regularly hold a bazaar, and since there is absolutely no guild within the territory, we will take up the other tasks as well. That was the current topic. And how much tax we will pay to the Baumeister household after getting rewarded for those jobs. Even the tax rate had already been decided by Margrave Braithilda. It's difficult for our territory to convert items into money. Things like the raw materials that you acquire in the Demon Forest will be liquidated in the Adventurers Guild of Breitberg. Afterwards you will pay the fixed 20% as tax of that sum of money. Artor. Since we are still affiliated with the Breitberg branch, it was necessary to do the things related to liquidation over there. In reality it was required to pay 20% of the liquidated sum of money as tax for the government at the Breitberg branch. But, if they end up paying 40% of the total sum, there will be complaints from adventurers like us. As expected, it is detestable to exploit adventurers this much. Therefore, Margrave Braithilda successfully negotiated with the guild on this matter. As a result, the governmental tax on the side of the Breitberg branch vanished. Given the situation, it can be seen as one-sided loss for guild's side, but since the guild is making plenty of profit by reselling the raw materials of the monsters hunted by adventurers, it didn't seem to be a particular problem. Besides, in this case political intentions are involved as well. As there was the mismanagement by the Adventurers Guild's headquarters a few days ago too, they won't unreasonably demand the governmental tax from Margrave Braithilda and me. I heard about this from Burkhart San afterwards. Anyway, you will pay 20% of your obtained profits. I want you to sub him, it a written report of the details once a month, Artur. Understood, Wendelin. It will be Klaus' job to check that written report, however he isn't the kind of man to cut corners on parts of his job. He also shouldn't blame me for stealing profit on behalf of Father and Kurt. I was able to trust him on that point. He is bearing a grudge within his heart against Father after all. Wendelin Sama will begin his activity as adventurer in this territory. That's really wonderful. Klaus, who was ordered by Father to check the written reports, doubtlessly said that on purpose. His great joy was an overreaction. Officially our activity as adventurers is just a front. The true aim is to purge Kurt, who will likely become a seed of trouble in future. Klaus has certainly noticed that already. For him my decision is an event of great congratulations. And, although Kurt is sharply glaring at such Klaus, he behaves as if he hasn't noticed that at all. It's been a while since I last looked forward to some written report of a calculation result. Klaus. Since each family harvests an amount of wheat, how much tax is usually paid? Given that he does nothing but always calculating only these things, he shows a delighted expression at being able to serve in his role as accountant after a long while. But in reality it couldn't be seen as anything but him ridiculing the abilities of Father and Kurt as feudal lords. Although Kurt, who realized that, glared at Klaus while his face became even redder, Father's expression didn't change in particular. Klaus also continued to pretend not noticing Kurt glaring at him. I shouldn't underestimate Klaus after all, Wendelin. Having noticed my provocations to make Kurt snap, he is helping out without saying anything about it. There is also the matter of the remaining smaller cases to be discussed and decided. Artur. True. Wendelin. Like this the negotiations with Father safely concluded. The only one having been left out of the loop was Kurt. He stood stock still on his sport while having a bright red face. Master, those are quite nice item sets? Roderich. You have experience as shop manager, Roderich. Wendelin. I was a stand-in. I was asked by a friend of a certain ordinary general store business. Roderich. I see. Wendelin. For the time being we decided to move our base of operations to the Baumeister territory until Kurt could be purged once he went on a rampage. I gathered various items and people in this week. First was the house. Since that rented house was too narrow once the number of people increased, I decided to move to another house. However, the biggest house in this territory is the Lord's Mansion. Therefore I decided to dismantle the house in Breitberg, I inherited from Master, and rebuild it over here. Although I was confronted with the question, how are you going to cross that mountain range? I resolved that with magic. Thank you fair chosen Rembrandt relocations. TN, the term used here means dismantling historic buildings and reconstructing them somewhere else. It's too long to write out, so I changed it a bit. Around 3 days ago I had an appointment with the head of the company, an old man named Barcode, who bared this fake Kansai accent, in front of my mansion in Breitberg. Actually, this old man uses a unique magic belonging to the earth attribute. That magic is called relocation. It was possible for him to dismantle quite the large structures and move them to another place to rebuild them there. Since he can even use teleportation in addition, he first transfers the target object into a magic bag once he has received a job from a client. After transferring to the target site, he takes out the building etc. out of the magic bag and reconstructs it there. Of course, since a building has parts like the foundation, which have to be buried in the ground, it's absolutely necessary for it to function in the same way after the relocation as it was before the relocation. Rembrandt Uji, who is able to calculate his relocations to this extent, always has his schedule filled for several months in advance. His customers are rich people such as large nobles. For example, if you want to build a villa in a beautiful landscape, but it's troublesome to call enough construction workers, you get Rembrandt to relocate a completed building to a suitable vacant land. In addition he also does things like relocating historic structures on order of the kingdom's government. Thanks to his special skill, he obtained the same position as me, appointed Baron. Originally he shouldn't be able to accept my request right away, but it seems Finance Minister Ruckner put in a good word. He appeared in front of the mansion at the appointed time. Well, then let's go. For some reason Rembrandt Uji talked in a slight Kansai dialect, however his work was fast with few words. Right after making a quick trip around the mansion's vicinity, my mansion, that was there just now, disappeared. Then, I leave it to you to guide me to the designated location. Even though Rembrandt Uji was able to transfer to almost all places in the kingdom as expected, it seems he hadn't gone to the Baumeister territory yet. Therefore I have taken him along with my teleportation spell to the Baumeister territory. Peaceful place, eh? Arriving at the place of destination, Rembrandt Uji smiles with his whole face while looking at the Baumeister territory that could be called a rural area in the sticks. And, Rembrandt Uji and me were greeted by Paul Nissan's group, whose role was to guard us. This is the planned site, Wendelin. As discussed with Father before, it is located at the border of the sphere of influence of the Baumeister household in the Savage Lands. I borrowed a level and sturdy ground. As the rent is free of charge, it doesn't matter what we do on the Savage Lands side. Instead, we have to definitely pay 20% of the gained profits. I believe that Father probably thinks it to be most satisfactory if the obtained spoils of the hunting in the Savage Land turns into money. If it's here, it'll be alright. It's a weird Kansai dialect, Wendelin. I'm told that Rembrandt Uji is also working as architect on the side. Making use of this knowledge as well, he took out the mansion, that originally belonged to Master, from the magic bag and reconstructed it into the same state as it was before. As usual it is instantaneous, fast work. Next is continuing onwards, he starts to relocate the 10 odd houses I requested from him before. I had them brought by Rembrandt Uji for the people, who will be living in the Baumeister territory for a while thanks to me. First off, regarding Master's mansion, there will be our party, Wilma, Roderich and the maid Dominique. For the houses on both sides, it will be for the skilled guards chosen by Roderich and the houses of the newly employed servants. In addition, the house, where Paul Nissan's group lives, has been relocated as well. Huh? An amicable resignation? Paul. Senpai, we are here as well, though. Sigurd. Finishing the job of the provincial inspection trip, Paul Nissan's group was working as my escort and had currently retired temporarily, but they ended up speechless by the sudden letter they received from Minister Edgar via Breitberg. The reason for that is the letter stating that while Paul Nissan and the 4 others are carrying out their mission to guard me, it has been decided to retire them from their guard units. Why? Paul. How about trying to read the continuation? Otmar. Once Paul Nissan read the continuation of the letter urged on by Otmar-san, this was written there. Continue the protection of Baron Baumeister without change. As for the contingency fee, I promise you that you will be promoted to the peerage of Associate Baron and will be given an appropriate plot of land. As for the remaining 4 people, they will receive a separate reward and as Paul Dono's retainers. Paul. In addition, although they are in a temporary suspension, their families in the capital will be paid the extra allowance of the provincial inspection trip and a salary for them working in a remote region to compensate for the part of the salary of the guard unit. Additionally, they will receive a large sum of money as fee for the guarding. That was the gist of what was written. Territory? Paul. Isn't that likely somewhere in the Savage Lands? Otmar. Without doubt it's as Otmar-san has said. And, together with the plans to have Hermann Nissan succeed the territory, I will assist in the development. As a result of that, I, who will possess the Savage Lands in the future, will become head of an advising branch family. Well, it's an unpleasant job to drag out and take down Kurt Aniki, who is the only one left out. There are the hardships of development, but such reward isn't that bad either. Paul. I'm really glad that I'm your friend. Otmar. Senpai. You are the best. Sigurd. I have outwitted my old man. Gotthard. My wife and the children will be delighted. Rudy. The other 4, hearing that they will be placed as retainers of Paul Nissan's developing, new Associate Baron territory, hugged Paul Nissan in great joy. Hey! I don't swing that way. Paul. I know that, my best friend. No, from today onwards you are my lord, Otmar. It's strange to be called like that by you, Otmar, Paul. Though it will probably a problem if you can't get used to it, Otmar. In contrast to Paul Nissan, who was making a sullen face since he was hugged by 4 men, the 4's expression was filled with delight due to the tentative decision of them working as retainers, which has the possibility of being hereditary. Heredity is possible. Retainer is wonderful since it has that. Gotthard. With this the proposal to Krista. Sigurd. It won't do if I don't write a letter to my family next. Rudy. All of them are below third son of a noble, children of an one-generation knight, or had been born into a merchant's family with their ancestors being nobles. They would likely be glad if they could become nobles, but they weren't dreamers who deluded themselves this far. From their point of view, they are plenty of winners if they are able to get a heredity as Paul Nissan's retainers. If it is like that, it won't do to not definitely ensure the safety of Baron Baumeister Sama's body. Otmar. This is the occasion where my skill with the sword will be helpful. I will behead hoodlums without making them suffer. Sigurd. That's right, let's slay everything that is slightly suspicious. Gotthard, TN, LOL, Hifumi, I summon thee. Why don't we pretend to make a mistake and kill that eldest son? That method would make the work rather fast. Otmar. Stop. Stop those dangerous statements. Wendelin. I eagerly calmed down Otmar Sand's group, who started to say outrageous things as they were getting carried away by their happiness. In the end you will open a shop after all. Roderich. Doing something like a bazaar is troublesome. Wendelin. Since I obtained the permission from father that it was all right to freely use the Savage Lands part, I spent around 1 week to bring in various things. I requested the relocation expert Rembrandtschie to get 10 odd moderately priced houses, that are up for sale in the capital, and relocate them around my mansion. Among them there were also some naturally aged houses that were dirt cheap, but the carpenters, who Roderich employed and brought along, are currently in the middle of repairing those. It was planned for me to send them back to the capital once they finish their work. Still, more than half of the houses are vacant. Will you recruit immigrants as well? Roderich. Roderich, the word immigrant is dangerous. Wendelin. With this place being the territory of father, it resulted in being no more than leased land for adventurers. Therefore I was employing new servants and not immigrants. Will there be sold various items in this shop? Roderich. I leave it to you, Roderich Tenchu. Wendelin, TN, Tenchu equals shop manager. Ha! Roderich. Some of the vacant houses had also mid-sized shops, which once went bankrupt and grew old in the suburbs of the capital. Once that shady Rinnenheim Uji heard that I was looking for such stores, he looked for cheap property. He found other old, cheap houses. He negotiated for them to be sold for a price that was close to being almost for free, as the buildings were scheduled to be torn down due to their age. Even for the other trade partner, since the buildings, planned to be demolished, were disposed of without having to pay dismantling expenses, it was a good deal for both sides. Besides, the state of the houses isn't that bad either. Given that there is a tendency of rebuilding houses quickly in the capital, they were decently usable properties once they had been repaired a little bit. Though it is wrong to say it, the houses within the Baumeister territory are a lot more worn out. Even the shop types among these houses will do just fine with only repairing their interior. Wendelin. One among those properties has the scale of a shop from the Genshu era, TN, 1384 to 1392. It's already under the command of Roderich. The mansion's maids, who act as shop assistants, and the young male clerks, hired in the capital, had a hard struggle with displaying the large amount of merchandise. Rather than opening a bazaar, the way of managing a shop is better for me, as it is less troublesome as well. Once arriving at that conclusion and obtaining permission from father, we have created Jack of all trades with me as owner and Roderich as shop manager. The goods for sale are indeed anything, or rather it was all the items we sold at the previous bazaar. Stuff like seasoning, general goods for living, agricultural equipment, manufactured metal products, sweets and meat. There are also items which rot easily, but once you put those into a magic bag, there is no problem at all. As a matter of fact, there is a general purpose magic bag among the items inherited from master. I left that with Roderich. It is a precious item since it is general purpose, but from my point of view its user-friendliness is bad, as you can only store away an amount of around one house. That's why it was an item I stored away. The user-friendliness is bad. Master, you would need to spend 3 million cents to buy this magic bag. Roderich. Well, then make sure to not lose it. Wendelin. Well, since it would be unpleasant to reimburse it, I won't lose it. Roderich. It was decided that I would regularly stock up merchandise at the Merchant Guild in Breitberg. It's also my job to buy items from the fief's population that might sell in Breitberg. There shouldn't be any items to sell but only wheat in the beginning, but I think gradually the inhabitants will also rack their brains over that. And then we were able to complete the shop. We decided to discontinue a certain tradition. Well, then there is no need to especially send a merchant group either, right? Brethilda. Margrave Brethilda has declared the suspension of dispatching a merchant group to the Baumeister territory, which had continued for many years, although he rather left it to me than dispatching a merchant group while also accommodating me in various ways. I realized that it wasn't anything that would yield me an overwhelming amount of money. Please purchase the wheat as well. Braythilda. Furthermore, we decided that I would make absolutely no profit on the sale of this wheat. It was decided that I would buy it at market price and sell it at market price. Because that was how the purchase by the merchant group actually worked, we judged it would become a problem if we suddenly changed that. Besides, if it's about profits, I will earn income by selling more and more of the other merchandise. However, Master, you have done something nasty. Roderick. I'm doing it on purpose. Wendelin. With the matter of me having started managing a shop, the means to supply salt from outside, called the merchant group, was gone. Furthermore, if they don't depend on me, they will end up losing the ability to procure things like salt, etc. I wondered whether Father would notice that and say something. He has given me an unconditional approval without letting Kurt join the negotiation table. Margrave Braythilda Dono had been controlling the unreliable merchant group with a questionable reason called feelings of guilt. How much could this change with Baron Baumeister's shop? Artur. Furthermore, the variety of my goods is bigger than that of the merchant group and my prices are lower as well. For Father, there is no reason to oppose it as long as the taxes are paid. Dad. At this rate Wendelin will usurp the territory. Kurt. Usurp? Then listen well. Until now the strategic resource for the Baumeister territory, salt, had been in the hands of the Margrave Braythilda household. However, has the Margrave Braythilda household usurped this territory so far? Artur. That is. Kurt. If you have complaints, I'll let you do something about the merchant group. Artur. Kurt complained to Father about me managing a store after all, but in the end he caved in after the exchange with Father. Do you want to call together the farmers in addition to? Roderick. I want to eat rice. Wendelin. Is that so? Roderick. The Baumeister territory and the savage lands in its south have mild climate and rain comes down properly as well, therefore there is plenty potential for rice crops. I decided to try cultivating them as a test, an expert in rice cultivation. Yes, there is one. Roderick. Since rice farming is popular in the territory of Margrave Braythilda, I will employ several old farmers, who have already left their agricultural land to their children and so on. They would coach the ambitious young people I recruited as farmers in the capital. Given that it will take time to cultivate new land to being agricultural land from the scratch, I created irrigation channels and paddy fields with engineering magic dividing them in equal sections. I removed stones and unnecessary things from the soil of the paddy fields with magic. Furthermore, I took a little bit of earth from a place that has been an excellent paddy field for several hundred years within the territory of Margrave Braythilda. Using that as reference, I changed the soil of only the paddy fields, that had been reclaimed, with magic. Repeatedly fine-tuning it many times, I got a passing mark from the farmers, whose role is to coach, in the end, and the soil of the paddy fields was complete. While cultivating the actual rice afterwards, this soil, I spent my time on, is the most suitable soil for this region and climate. Even now, 10-odd young farming applicants plow the soil in accordance with the guidance of the old farmers. They do construction work to reinforce the ridges between the rice fields and the irrigation channels. In preparation for planting rice, I assembled the previously purchased glass houses for the sake of setting up the raising of seedlings. You are going all out, Roderick. That's because I really want to eat rice, Wendelin. Though there is that too, I developed the savage lands in short time with magic, which couldn't be developed by any members of the Baumeisters until now. It was for the sake of putting pressure on Kurt. If Master says so, I will manage the foundation here as well. Roderick. Since it is adjoining the Baumeister territory, I had planned to entrust this part as assistance to Hermann Nissan in the future. If you calculate the tax yields of managing the development of an area of cultivated land, a small-scale agricultural community and a shop, it's not that far in the future. It will become practice for Roderick, whom I plan to set as prefectural governor of the developed territory in the savage lands. Don't make mistakes in the calculation of the taxes, Wendelin. It's because I'm taking advantage of that personage. By the way, what about the ladies? Roderick. Ah, if it's Elise's group. Wendelin. Paul Nissan's group is in the middle of encircling Roderick and me as guards. Elise has gone to help out Meister Dono at the church. I'm told he hurt his back last night again and ended up losing the ability to stand up. Since there shouldn't even be any other priest in this rural territory, it has become the turn of Elise, who is an assistant priest, but since Kurt would scheme something stupid if I let her do it alone, Wilma, who can't get used to wear a priestess garb, served as her bodyguard. God, my stomach shrunk. Wilma. Wilma-san. God won't listen to such direct petitions. Elise. Since Wilma has probably the same weak belief as I have, she would say such thing though. So, Ur's group and Burkhart Sama are in the demon forest. Roderick. Because our stay here was as adventurers, not going to hunt was like putting the cart before the horse. Therefore Urw's group and Burkhart Sam left to explore the demon forest. I wanted to go as well. Wendelin. Master's official work is here. Roderich. Until now, we haven't done anything but roughly exploring the invasion route of the expedition forest to the center of the demon forest. The distribution of monsters in the center didn't look to be very different to other domains. But, there's also the possibility that it might change in other areas. We decided to investigate this for a while from now on. In the morning I took them to the investigation point with teleportation. I will pick them up there in the evening. That was the plan. Isn't it still too early to pick them up? Wendelin. Then, do you want to finish earlier than usual? Roderich. There is a reason why the Baumeister household gave up on developing these savage lands. One point was that there are many dangerous wild animals in the savage lands. When you cultivate crops and such, as a matter of fact wild animals like boars and bears, as well as packs of wolves aiming for the rabbits and deer that go after the crops, could appear. While carrying out the development, you have to guarantee the security of that personnel. Certainly that's impossible for a small-scale territory that hasn't overly much flexibility. However, isn't that the same for Master Roderich? Although I gathered people for the development and guards with money and connections, their numbers are still insufficient. Therefore, Roderich was now worried as he also felt that the number of people was too little to protect the area of cultivated lands once the general reclamation finished. Too much personnel isn't necessary. Wendelin. The reason is that there is a gap of 3 meters between the savage lands and the reclaimed area of cultivated lands. I dug a moat with a depth of around 5 meters. I used the dirt I dug up at that time to create earthen walls and thus protected the area against the invasion of wild animals with 2 layers. If that's the case, it'll be all right. Roderich. Roderich seemed to be relieved. And, once he heard the rough management plan from me a while after that, he returned to his work in a rush and high spirits. No, well. Thanks to Baron Baumeister Sama, the countermeasures against harmful animals during the reclamation are quick and simple. The elder men in charge of coaching raised a voice of astonishment due to the new cultivated land, which took shape in only a few days. Also, it seems they have been somehow able to manage the newcomers by themselves. Instead, I ask you for rice. Wendelin. However, there isn't enough fertilizer. Fertilizer, huh? Wendelin. Of course fertilizer is necessary to make delicious rice. But you can't expect for chemical fertilizers to be in this world. I harvested a large quantity of weeds in the savage lands with magic. Also, in addition I fermented with magic a combination of raw garbage, human waste etc. I completed a large amount of fertilizer on a vacant land after working at it for a while. Baron Baumeister Sama can even produce fertilizer with magic. However, it's impossible to produce it all the time. Wendelin. If the first portion is this much, I think we will be able to harvest a lot at the first time. For the next time, we will do something about the fertilizer. Reclamation, digging irrigation channels, keeping the soil in good condition and producing fertilizer. Usually, they would have overworked their bodies. The things they should have done, have been mostly done with magic. Because such reclamation under favorable conditions is very improbable, they are relentlessly training the newcomer so that they aren't spoiled. Baron Baumeister Sama, please use your magic once again at the time of reclaiming new land, if possible. By the way, will you go with 2 crops per year befitting to the climate? Wendelin. Given that there are sudden dangers, we plan to go with 2 crops per year. After exchanging the above mentioned, the elder men began to teach rice cultivation to the newcomers. Because that's how it is, I will entrust the management of this Special Development Ward to you. Wendelin. Special Development Ward. Roderich. With such plot of land it is fine, if we have to pay 20% of the profit to Father. The management of the shop and rice cultivation has begun. Although it is within the Baumeister territory, the influence of Father and Kurt doesn't reach to me, who is the master of that place. Therefore I arbitrarily called it Special Development Ward. For the present the preparation of the shop, agricultural land and housing finished in the evenings of the days. I talk with Roderich, who is calculating the expenses, about my plans in the study of my mansion. If we raise the profits here, Kurt's reputation will fall. Wendelin. Don't kill with a blade, but kill with money it is. That's heartless. Roderich. By no means, that doesn't mean that I will go and blow him away with magic either. Wendelin. That's certainly correct. Roderich. Roderich, do you think that I'm a detestable guy? Wendelin. It would be fine if he thought like that, but I decided to try asking him as a test. If you consider my previous circumstances, you won't have the leeway to think such a thing either. That personage neglected to put in effort, although he would be inheriting the territory. He wasn't able to deal with the change of times, namely the relationship to the outside, either. He didn't bow his head to his younger brother, with the reason being his seniority. For nobles, it is occasionally necessary to bow to someone else in a place not seen by people. Roderich. I see. Wendelin. From now on, it is unknown whether it will be necessary for Master to bow his head. However, you will be able to lower the initial expenses this way. Magic is something outrageous after all. Roderich. Thus I was finally developing one part of the Savage Lands, by using the power of money, a hold.